I remember that fateful night like it was yesterday, an experience that changed my life forever. It was a dark and rainy Saturday, and I was covering my friend's shift at the local pizzeria where we worked. Normally, I manned the cash register, but that night, my manager tasked me with making the last delivery. The delivery was to an area far from town, about 10 kilometers beyond our usual territory. The GPS led me down dimly lit back roads, taking me to an isolated locality I had never visited before. Streetlights flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the walls of decrepit houses. Finally, I arrived at the designated residence. It was a single-story house, with an abandoned look and a neglected garden. Upon ringing the doorbell, the door swung open almost instantly. A middle-aged man, with sparse gray hair and a thick mustache, appeared at the doorway. His pale face seemed illuminated by ghostly light. The man smiled amiably and said he would be right back, disappearing into the house. I stood there on the threshold, feeling the cold air seep through my clothes. I felt uneasy with the atmosphere and the strange figure who greeted me. When he returned, he insisted that I come inside where it was warmer. Against my better judgment, I succumbed to the pressure and entered the unfamiliar residence. The door shut behind me with a sinister click. The interior of the house was nearly as cold as the outside, indicating there was no heating system. The man vanished again into another room, leaving me alone in a shadowy hallway. I began to approach the front door, longing to leave that place as quickly as possible. Suddenly, the man reappeared and opened a door leading to a dark basement. He told me he usually kept his money down there and suggested that I accompany him. I promptly refused, noting the complete darkness emanating from the basement. The stairs creaked as something moved down below, causing my heart to race. Before I could react, the man charged menacingly towards me. I managed to land a punch, momentarily knocking him down. However, I heard footsteps approaching from the dark depths of the basement. Without a second thought, I sprinted towards the front door. As I struggled to open the door, the man recovered and lunged at me. I fought to break free from his grasp, pushing him away with all my might. With one last effort, I escaped from the haunted house and ran towards my car parked on the street. I got into the car breathless and glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the sinister figure staring at me from the doorway. I started the car and sped away without looking back. I drove to the pizzeria and recounted everything to my manager, who immediately called the police. In the following days, I was haunted by what had happened. I never knew the final outcome of that dark night. My manager gave me a few days off, but the terror of the experience remained etched in my mind forever. Since then, I avoid walking down dark streets and isolated roads. I learned the hard way that one should never enter a stranger's house, especially on stormy nights like that one. That summer after my first year of college, I was working as a pizza delivery driver in a quiet little town. I was living with my parents, and the job was a way to earn some extra money during the break. However, one peculiar night turned my deliveries into a nightmare that I will never forget. It was a dark and humid night when I received the last delivery of the shift. The town was already quiet, and the road was nearly deserted. I picked up the pizza, got into the car, and followed the address provided by the GPS. The delivery location was an area I wasn't familiar with, a park on the outskirts of town. As I approached the destination, the road became narrower and winding. There were no signs of life around, just trees and grass. The GPS indicated that I had arrived, but there was no sign of any buildings or residences. Only a vast park surrounded by dark woods. Confused, I parked the car by the side of the road and stepped out, looking around. It was late at night, and I couldn't spot any potential customers. A shiver ran down my spine as I surveyed the silent and desolate surroundings. I decided to double-check the address on my phone, thinking there might have been a mistake. However, the map confirmed that I was at the right place. I decided to get out of the car and explore a bit, hoping to find some clue about where the customer might be. As I ventured away from the vehicle, the silence of the night became oppressive. The only sounds were the whisper of the trees and the rustle of leaves in the wind. A sense of unease grew within me, as if something was watching from the shadows. That's when I noticed movement in the woods ahead of me. A dark figure moved among the trees, almost imperceptible in the darkness. My heart raced, and I felt completely vulnerable in that isolated environment. Suddenly, my phone rang, making me jump. It was my boss from the pizzeria, calling to check on the reason for the delay. I explained the situation, but as I spoke, I kept my eyes fixed on the indistinct figure in the woods. The person seemed to be approaching slowly, but I couldn't discern who or what it was. I ended the call and stood still, watching the figure emerge from the darkness. It was a man, but his appearance was strange and distorted. A chill ran down my spine as he approached, revealing a sinister smile. The man didn't seem friendly. He asked me to bring the pizza to him, his voice sounding strange and distant. Intense fear gripped me as I realized I was in danger. Instinctively, I took a few steps back, but the man continued to approach, his gaze fixed on me. Without hesitation, I ran back to my car and got in, locking the doors immediately. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the man standing by the roadside, watching me with a penetrating gaze. His eyes gleamed in the darkness, full of indescribable malice. In a terror-induced impulse, I started the car and drove back to the pizzeria as fast as I could. I arrived breathless and recounted everything to my boss, whose reaction was surprisingly calm. He gave me a few days off, but the fear of that night haunted my thoughts for a long time. I continued delivering pizzas for a few more months, but I always remained cautious, especially when dealing with unknown addresses and nighttime deliveries. The memory of the sinister figure in the woods remained vivid in my mind, a constant reminder that the world harbors dangers we can never fully comprehend. It was during a hot and stifling summer that I encountered an experience that would change my perspective on safety in my own suburban town. At the time, I was starting my first job as an assistant at a local pizzeria. The work was straightforward initially, helping the chef in the kitchen and doing general cleaning tasks. Everything changed when the main delivery driver had a disturbing encounter that caused him to abruptly leave the job. I vividly remember the day he returned to the boss's office, eyes filled with terror and words scarce. He mentioned something about the last delivery and how that particular house left him with a sense of dread. No one quite understood, but his sudden departure was a dark omen of what was to come. I was tasked with taking on deliveries while they searched for a new driver. It seemed like an exciting opportunity at the time, but I soon discovered that some deliveries were not like the others. One night, I received an unusual address for a secluded house in the rural part of town. The GPS guided me through narrow roads, surrounded by a landscape that seemed increasingly desolate. Upon arriving at the front of the house, the atmosphere around me instantly changed. It was as if the air grew heavier and darker, as if the very place exuded a sense of imminent danger. The surroundings of the property were unkempt. Dead trees whispered in the wind, and the weathered porch seemed like an invitation to the unknown. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door, anxiously hoping there would be no answer. However, the door lock began to shake, and the door opened slowly, revealing the frail figure of an elderly woman. Her eyes, though weakened by time, burned with a terrifying intensity. I was momentarily paralyzed by the eerie aura emanating from her. "Pepperoni pizza, ma'am," I managed to articulate, trying to remain composed in the strange situation. The woman's response was gruff and hoarse, her eyes never wavering from mine. I handed over the pizza, but she remained unmoved, as if expecting something beyond the simple transaction. It was when she mentioned another person, someone who had apparently visited before. Her words echoed in my mind, filling me with growing unease. As I waited for payment, I sensed that something was amiss. The woman rummaged through her purse with deliberate slowness, as if prolonging the moment. A palpable tension settled in the air as her eyes narrowed in my direction. Then suddenly a shadow loomed behind her, a man with a dark countenance who appeared in the doorway. A shiver ran down my spine as I heard footsteps beside me on the left, indicating the presence of another individual nearby. "Hey!" A deep voice resonated in the twilight as a younger man emerged from the darkness, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that chilled my blood. The three individuals began to close in on me while staring at me in a bizarre manner. The world around me seemed to fade away, replaced by a sense of pure urgency. Without thinking, I turned my back on the horrifying scene before me and ran towards my car, my heart pounding uncontrollably in my chest. The shadows of the night seemed to dance around me, obscuring the landscape as I drove frantically in search of safety. I did not look back until I was far enough away, leaving behind the dark house and its strange inhabitants. The agony of the moment echoed in my mind as I returned to the pizzeria, trying to process what I had witnessed. The unfolding of events was no less disturbing. Upon reporting the experience to my boss, I discovered that I was not the only one to face the terror of that mysterious house. The previous delivery driver, James, had also encountered a similar situation, culminating in his sudden and enigmatic departure. Intrigued and alarmed, my boss decided to investigate the sinister property thoroughly. The subsequent findings only deepened the mystery and unease. The house had supposedly been abandoned and foreclosed for years. Sometimes I find myself reflecting on what would have happened if I hadn't acted on instinct that fateful night. Would I have been a victim of a macabre plot, or simply a terrified bystander to something even more sinister? Thank you for watching until here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. See you soon.